Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to take a look at all 10 Premier League games, assessing all of the key FPL options in each of them, and use that to colour my opinion moving forwards. If you enjoyed today's video, please do remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's an indication to me as to whether or not to carry on with this kind of content. In the meantime, though, let's crack on with the show. So let's get started with Arsenal versus Southampton. But before we do, just a reminder that all of the data and the screenshots today come from Fantasy Football Hub. They've still got an offer on, so if you wanted to get involved and sign up to there is a link in the description below. In the meantime, though, let's start off with Arsenal. Now, 3-1 against Southampton. In the end, it was relatively comfortable, although Southampton did have them on the ropes, I guess you'd call it, for a little bit. They obviously held it to 0-0 at half-time, went a goal up in the second half, although they didn't exactly hold on to the lead for long. So in the end, it was a relatively comfortable performance. Those of you with a double Arsenal defence at the moment, including myself, will be very frustrated that they haven't kept a clean sheet in the last 2 game weeks against Leicester and Southampton. I think for what it's worth, it's very unlucky that you haven't gotten clean sheet points out of either of those 2 performances, especially in this one. Southampton didn't have a lot of chances. The chances that they did have, they did come pretty close with, but the overall XG number was very, very low. So again, I think you've been a tad unfortunate. And for me, both Arsenal defenders, if you've got 2, would both be holds at the moment. It is worth noting, though, that Arsenal's best fixtures are probably now in the past, and they've got Bournemouth next up, not bad, but then 3 pretty tough fixtures from a clean sheet point of view. So if you can look at a medium-term horizon, I do understand if you want to start looking elsewhere. For now, though, I think they're still strong picks, and Arsenal have been unlucky not to keep more clean sheets than they have. Talking about the Arsenal players in particular right now, Bukayo Saka, absolutely phenomenal. Goal and 2 assists, and of course the 3 bonus points as well. You can see on the chart here, his BPS of 67, absolutely phenomenal. And I'm also surprised his effective ownership wasn't any higher than it was at just a tad under 40%. Great performance. He's not explosive often, and this is only the 2nd time in his Premier League career that we've seen him get 3 returns in 1 match from a Premier League point of view. I'm not sure about FPL because they count extra assists here and there, but we know he's not the most explosive of players, but it was Southampton at home at the end of the day. So congratulations to anyone who captained him. 16 points from him. Obviously, very, very good performance. Again, he's another player that I probably wouldn't be looking at moving on anytime soon, especially with Bournemouth next up. And over 1 XGI in the 90 minutes against Southampton, same as last week against Leicester as well. Trossard and Martinelli both bench. That was a big surprise, especially for me. I very nearly punted on Trossard this game week, and those of you who went there, I think, can feel a tad unfortunate. I don't think many of us saw Sterling and Jesus starting from the off against Southampton, but because they've got depth, especially from now on, we've got to get used to the fact that these other players are going to want to get minutes, and they are competing. Neither really covered themselves in too much glory, though, so I would be surprised if Trossard or Martinelli didn't start in game week 8. That being said, it is a risk moving forwards. Bournemouth, I think they probably will, but maybe not great long-term picks from this point onwards. Moving across to Southampton, Dibbling impressed again, obviously played very well off of the right-hand side, and I particularly like him in that position. At 4.5, 4.6, he might have gotten 1 price rise now. I think he is the best option out there at that price, but he's definitely an 8th attacker. He's not someone you can rely on every single week, basically just because Southampton aren't going to score that many goals. So I think if he's your 8th attacker, absolutely fine. He should continue to starting, and he has been our best player. But I don't think you can rely on him as a starting option in many game weeks. Maybe against the weakest opposition, that's fine. And Archer did score. So again, if you wanted to look at a budget striker who's starting, Ross Stewart, who again started in this match, came off pretty early. Archer had to come on, obviously got the goal. He's known as a good finisher, and he might get the nod to start for next week and beyond. So again, maybe a budget differential option there. For what it's worth, Southampton rotating far too much at the moment for me to want to go for any of their assets outside of Dibbling, and even then he would probably be my 8th attacker at best. One of the games, if not the game of the weekend, of course, was Brentford versus Wolves. 5-3, 8-goal thriller, and Brentford get off to a really hot start yet again. That's 4 game weeks in a row now that they've scored in the first couple of minutes, obviously slowing down a little bit, but Collins breaking forward and getting the goal from open play was not on my bingo card at all from the off. Now, Brentford again look good going forwards. What I would say is Mbeumo looks like possibly one of the best assets in the game right now. For his price point, at least, he has absolutely everything you want in an FPL asset. He's got 90 minutes, penalties, good XGI data, and he's talismanic for Brentford. Obviously, got the penalty in this one, was unlucky maybe not to get an assist or two from chances created, primarily for Lewis Potter on the other wing. But I think he will continue to do very well moving forwards with the fixtures ahead for Brentford. I do also like Fabio Carvalho, but what I would say is if he's not starting every single week, he's probably not an option I'm going to be looking to bring in anytime soon. So when he's regularly starting week in, week out, and he locks in his place in the starting 11, absolutely fine. For now, though, he's probably, even for his price, too risky for me to go for. I think there are just other options around his price point that are more locked in for minutes, and therefore are just simply better options at this point in time. He is a talent, though, so when he locks in that place, I am interested. On the Wolves side, I do actually really like Cunha as a pick. Now, they've got good fixtures coming, and he does seem to be able to find a way to continue scoring for Wolves. He is definitely their talismanic figure. But it's just whether or not you back Wolves to continuously be creating chances and getting him goals when they have been this poor so far this season. I think they've been a bit unlucky with the fixtures up until this week. They had a really rough run of fixtures all the way up till now. But this was a poor performance. This was a standout poor performance for Wolves. They conceded a lot of big chances. They looked a bit all over the place at the back. And with City up next, I think they are very likely to get another pummeling in game week 8. So I think sadly for Wolves, it's a little bit more torture for the next couple of game weeks, but I think they are going to turn a corner soon. And when they do, I am interested in Cunha as an option because he is now, I think, down to 6.4 million. I think he's going to be a good budget pickup in the forward line soon. They have been unlucky. This was poor, but you'd expect over the international break that they do improve. They get slightly better. And maybe very soon we're going to see a slightly different side to Wolves in the coming game weeks. So looking at the Saturday lunchtime kickoff, the first and major flag that I want to point out is Luis Diaz was benched. Now, those of us who got the nod early on before the deadline were maybe lucky enough to bench him in our own sides. He came on for 20 minutes at the end, but didn't really do anything. And I think it's worth noting as well that Gakpo, his replacement, played pretty well, obviously picked up the assist for the goal. So both Gakpo and Jota playing well in this game probably makes it a bit too much of a risk for Luis Diaz moving forwards. And it is worth noting that Luis Diaz's performance levels had dipped a little bit going into this game week. Not enough that he wasn't a good pick, but it was maybe more and more of a risk that Gakpo would take his place. That's what we saw in this game week. And I think we're also fairly likely to see it in game week 8 based on this performance and also the fact that Luis Diaz will be travelling back from South America after the international break, and he was in line to be benched after the previous international break if it wasn't for Gakpo's injury. So I think with all of that, those factors weighed up, it makes Luis Diaz a potential sell for me over the international break going into game week 8. On the other side of things, on the Crystal Palace side, Eze has still only gotten 1 attacking return so far this season. Very, very frustrating for owners and those of you who held him this long, and I think it is understandable to get rid of him now if you have shown that much faith in him. Although it is worth noting again that Eze played well. He had a couple of key chances. He was definitely the focal point for Palace, but it's how long you're going to give him for him to come good. I think it will happen. He will balance out over the season. But there are other options at his price and below that I think you can probably get just as much, if not more, out of at this point in time. So unfortunately for me, I think all Palace players right now are either a very, very hesitant sell in terms of Eze or a definite non-buy because, let's face it, not many other players are being discussed right now. Munoz went off. Mateta was benched as well, so he's a non-option. And I don't think you're really looking at any other players in the Palace lineup right now. They did play pretty well, but they're still without a win. And I wouldn't say they're necessarily a team to target, but they're also not one to avoid either in terms of the players that you want playing against them. This is not me talking about the players that you're going to pick up necessarily. Now, Liverpool, I think from a defensive point of view, are looking so much better than they did last season. Much more structured, much more cautious playing out from the back as well. And there's a much better system in place for keeping those clean sheets than we've ever seen before. So players like Trent, BPS King at the moment as well. That's bonus points King. We see him on the live points at the moment. These aren't locked in, but he's getting 2 bonus points from a 1-0 win without too much in terms of going forward. The XA was there yet again, so hopefully we're going to see some attacking returns soon. Only 1 so far this season, though, is a bit of a surprise after 7 game weeks. Overall, though, I still think he's worth the money. The one thing worth noting for Liverpool at the moment is that the fixtures are going to toughen over the next few game weeks, so it's whether or not you want to hold on to Trent, knowing that clean sheets are less and less likely against the better opposition. Okay, so I won't spend too long talking about Everton Newcastle because it was a 0-0, and I have to say it was about an hour and a half of my life that I wish I could get back. It wasn't a great game at all. The highlights obviously included Pickford's penalty save for Gordon. So Gordon owners have gotten the highs and lows of FPL in the last 2 weeks. Obviously buried the penalty against Man City when he wasn't really expected to get that much, and has missed the penalty against Everton, giving Pickford owners a lot to cheer about in the process. So congratulations out there if you're a Pickford owner or an Everton defence owner. They will pick up the odd clean sheet. Dyche knows how to keep attacking teams out at times, and we saw that last season as well. He does know how to build a solid defence. With Braithwaite hopefully coming back soon, they're only going to get better with good fixtures on the horizon as well. Newcastle look fairly blunt up top at the moment. Gordon looks like their most attacking threat. Obviously missed the penalty and a few key chances in this one, but he still looks like a good pick, generally speaking. I think with Newcastle, they are really missing that talismanic centre forward, and it would help them to have Gordon back on the wing where he operates best. So when Isak or Wilson come back in, I think they're going to be a much better team to be looking at from an attacking point of view. Until that moment, I think Gordon's okay to hold, but outside of that, I probably wouldn't be looking at them. Now, DCL, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, was fairly unlucky. I think he had one fairly big chance that he probably should have done a little bit better with. And within that little moment as well, I think he was unlucky perhaps not to get a penalty from that, or he kind of kicked into the back of the defender, but you've seen them given. So I think on another day, DCL could have gotten an attacking return from this match, but at the end of the day, it is Everton. They're not going to score 2 or 3 goals every single week. He is a 6 million forward, so you're hoping for maybe an attacking return every other game week at absolute most. So I don't think it's a nightmare situation. I think he led the line pretty well, and both him and McNeil over the next stretch of fixtures, considering they're quite good, I still think are okay holds for the time being. So moving on to the Man City Fulham game, obviously Haaland was captained by the vast majority of the player base in FPL this week, and annoyingly, that's a second blank in a row. Obviously did so against Newcastle, has now done so at home to Fulham. A bit of a surprise, and he didn't really get many big chances. There was one that he flashed across goal in the first half, but all in all, a pretty quiet one for Haaland. So obviously questions start to appear as to whether or not 15.4 million, which is a record for any player in FPL, I believe, is worth the money for a player that just simply isn't getting goals as it stands. So I do understand the worry, and there is a lot you can do with that money if you did get rid of him. However, I think maybe just taking a little bit of a pause makes sense here. The fixtures ahead are absolutely incredible. Wolves and Southampton in the next 2, and the data is also very, very good. He's averaging over 1 XG per 90 still in the league this season. I think overall, variance does happen. He's not going to bury 3 or 4 goals every single week. He's still got 10 in 7, and the fixtures to come suggest that he should, more often than not, get a couple of goals here and there. So I would say, if you've got him, do not sell him ahead of the next fixture run. Now, talking about Fulham for a little while, what I would say is they look really good on the break. They actually generated a higher XG than Man City in this game, mostly from counterattacks and breakaways. I think they set up really smartly in this match, and they're not going to be whipping boys against some of the big teams this season. So that's one to take into account moving forwards. But also the fact that they're very situational in the way that they set up depending on those matches. So we saw it today. ESR Smith Rowe was benched against Man City. He did come on for a little bit at the end. But overall, I think what we're going to see is a bit of a tactical setup against the bigger teams, especially away from home, where they're going to be much more pragmatic. They're going to sit 2 players in front of the defence. And Smith Rowe is not one of those defensive-minded midfielders. He's much more progressive. So it's not like you're expecting much from him anyway in these sorts of games. But if you are hoping to start him, maybe be a little bit worried that he might not necessarily start the match and you can't rely on him to play 80, 90 minutes in these kind of matches. Now, City, again, they find a way to win. They also find a way to concede yet again. So is it just arguably not worth the hassle to own their defenders? Rico Lewis, I would say, is maybe the only option I would consider at the moment, basically just because he's so cheap. You don't need to break the bank to have him, and he does seem to be starting most weeks. He's also a bit of an attacking asset as well. He does press forwards. He did get the assist for the Doku goal. He didn't really do much to pick up that assist, but what I found really interesting is that after he laid the ball off, he kept moving forwards. He actually found himself in the box ahead of Doku, as Doku obviously came across the defenders and smashed one in. Rico Lewis was ahead of him at that moment in time, so he was getting into advanced positions regularly, and I think we'll continue to see that over the next few fixtures, which look very favourable for City. I think that surely we're going to start seeing clean sheets for City given the fixtures to come as well. So again, I'd probably hold firm on Lewis and maybe even Gvardiol if you did already have him, although I probably wouldn't be breaking the bank to buy him just yet. One final thing to note as well, Foden did get his first Premier League start of the season in this match. Didn't really do a whole lot and did get brought off with a few minutes to go. But I think, again, what we're going to see is a build-up of minutes. He had a short pre-season. So I think that after the international break, he will be a player that is going to come into the zeitgeist in FPL very quickly because of the next run of fixtures. I don't think he's necessarily a player that we need to rip our teams apart for right now, though, given the fact that we can't be sure that he's getting 90 minutes and we just haven't seen him at the top of his game just yet. So you are taking a bit of a upside gamble on him and his performance levels improving against weaker opposition in the next few game weeks. Could be a really good differential punt, though, because we know what he's capable of, especially in those fixtures that you expect City to smash in 3, 4, 5 goals, which we definitely expect over the next few. So looking at another Sunday fixture, 1-1 between Chelsea and Nottingham Forest. Palmer with another assist that takes him to 11 attacking returns in just 7 game weeks, with an underlying data of 0.89 XGI per 90. That's very, very good. And although he might not have picked up a big mega haul in this game week, he comes away with another assist, another attacking return, and I would say his performance levels were also very high in this match as well, central to everything Chelsea do. So if you have him, despite the fact Saka played really well around the same sort of price, I would say that Palmer is someone that you kind of have to make your bed with right now. He could well be a season hold if you've got him, even in tougher fixtures. You'd expect if anyone does well for Chelsea, it would be him. He's so central to everything they do. I would say he's a definite hold. Now, the fixtures are tougher, so I wouldn't rip up my team to buy him if you don't have him already, especially considering Saka played so well in game week 7 and has done really well so far this season himself. But of course, if you've got him already, you're absolutely happy with him. Now, Jackson was subbed off for Nkunku. Now, I would be concerned on this one for 2 reasons. One is Jackson didn't have the greatest game ever. Nkunku has been playing well when given the chance. And we know the quality of Nkunku. He will be pushing for a start in the Premier League soon. The other thing to notice, I am recording this fairly early on Sunday, is that I noticed a social media clip being pushed around after the game of Jackson seemingly slap one of the Forest players after he was subbed off. Now, that could come with repercussions. He could even face a ban if he's unlucky. So it's one to keep an eye on. It could also mean Nkunku at 6 or 6.1 million could become an option up front for Chelsea. So keep an eye on that. Obviously, it's too early to tell just yet. Now, outside of Palmer, I probably wouldn't really want too many Chelsea assets, obviously with the asterisks on Nkunku. For this run ahead, the fixtures aren't looking too great. On the other side of things, though, Chris Wood scores yet again. That's 4 goals in 7 game weeks for him. And any of you that started the season off with him, knowing that minutes were possibly a bit of a risk, your faith has been rewarded. And I think a lot of managers will want to look to get him over the next run of fixtures, which obviously looks very, very decent. The next 4 fixtures look really good. So at his price, I think he's a great pickup right now. And the minutes, he was taken off around 80 minutes today, but I think generally speaking look pretty good. And if he keeps scoring, he'll keep starting. So he's a great option at the price. All other options, I would say, are situational. Now, Morgan Gibbs-White is off penalty, so I probably wouldn't be considering him. Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, sometimes they don't even start, so I probably wouldn't be considering them. But what I would say on Forest's side is that they do look very capable in the Premier League this season. They look like a tidy defence, and they don't look too bad going forwards either. So overall, I would say that if you're looking at picking up players who are playing against them, don't be necessarily expecting big hauls. Now, they're not obviously the hardest fixture in the Premier League, but they set up very well defensively, and bigger sides going up against them probably shouldn't expect 4 or 5 goals against them. They're not going to be whipping boys this season, as we saw this game week. So I would watch out for that moving forwards when you're looking at captaincy options or bringing in premium assets to target this fixture. Maybe we need to dampen our expectations a little bit because Forest have got good defensive data and we do need to take that into account. So West Ham 4, Ipswich 1. Bowen scoring again. That's 3 goals, 2 assists now, I believe, in the league at 0.42 XGI per 90. Not bad at all. And what we keep seeing year after year with Bowen is he just ticks along in the background. Not many of us notice him, but he just keeps getting the points. He's only a few points behind some of the big hitters in midfield right now as well. And at just 7.4 million, he's a good option moving forwards. West Ham's fixtures also are not a bad run of games coming. So from an attacking point of view, I quite like it. Defensively, not so much. I don't think they're going to keep many clean sheets. I'd probably avoid their defence. Conceded, of course, to Delap this game week, who in particular, I do like the look of at Ipswich right now. I talked about him in my transfer targets last week, scored yet again, and I think yet again, he's looking better and better in the Premier League week after week, more assured of himself, taking his chances very, very well, limited as they may be. But I think he continues to lead the line very well for Ipswich. He looks strong, he looks mobile, and he's full of confidence right now. He'll take those half chances with such confidence that I would back him to score more often than not. And again, at just 5.6 million, he's another budget forward that you could easily have in the mix, maybe even ahead of Vardy, DCL Wood, or certainly in conversation with those players. And Ipswich's fixtures over the next run, I think all the way to pretty much Christmas, looks very, very promising as well. I also don't think they played too badly in this fixture. I think they were slightly unlucky to lose 4-1. They did concede quite a lot of pretty big chances, but they also created a little bit as well. So Delap moving forwards, I do like the look of. Defensively, they are going to concede goals. So if you want the likes of Leif Davis, you're relying mainly on attacking returns, which so far haven't really been there. But I do still think that they are coming pretty soon. A lot goes through him down that left wing. And if Delap's going to score a few more goals this season, you would think that Davis gets a few assists as well. But Delap, overall, 4 goals already. He looks like he's settling into the league very nicely. So both Bowen and Delap, I think, are good players to look at moving forwards as differential pickups. So 2 0-0s in game week 7. One was, of course, Aston Villa versus Man United. A bit of a snooze fest. I watched this one from start to finish, again, like the Everton Newcastle game. And again, it was another 90 minutes that I wish I could get back. It wasn't great. I think what I probably have learned from this is that Aston Villa, post Champions League high, probably came back down to earth, were a little bit groggy, a little bit tired from midweek, which is perfectly understandable, by the way. They still look good in patches, and they still did create a little bit, and never really looked that troubled by Man United either. They're a great side at the end of the day, and they will be competing for Europe yet again. But after Champions League football, I do think maybe we need to dampen expectations from Villa generally after those midweek clashes. Bayern Munich is obviously going to be the toughest of the lot, but from here on out, they've not got the deepest squad in the entire world, and they are going to want to start players like Watkins, Rodgers, most of their back four as well, obviously Emi Martinez in goal, and their centre midfielders most weeks, including the Champions League as well. So they are going to play a lot of minutes, and that is going to impact them on the Saturday, Sunday games too. So that is something to take into account. Either way, though, I think Rodgers and Watkins are absolutely fine to hold. The fixtures aren't amazing coming, but they're also not terrible. So Rodgers at 5.2, 5.3 million, I think is a perfect 8th attacker right now. You could even argue he's a good 7th attacker, but the data still isn't great. So unless he starts improving that data, there might be other players that you want as your 7th attacker, with him on the bench most weeks, coming off every now and then. The quality of the player is very high though, and I think he will improve on the data across the season. 0.4 XG per side, rounded up or down either way. Not much created either way, and not many big chances. But what does that mean in terms of defensive ability? For me, I think Man United have improved defensively. Even with the injuries that they picked up in this game, they didn't really concede many big chances or much XG whatsoever. And this is actually their 4th clean sheet already this season in just 7 matches. So I do actually think that Man United's defence is something that maybe we should be looking at more closely. Mazraoui is a good price. Dalot on the other side, a good price as well, or a reasonable price at the very least, just over 5 million or 5 million exactly. And Onana in goal, even at 5, might not be terrible. It is Man United at the end of the day. I don't expect a clean sheet every single week, and they are definitely able to concede goals that you wouldn't expect them to. But the data is better this season, and I think that we've got to weigh them up on the performances we've seen so far, and they've kept out attacks quite regularly this season. 0.4 away at Villa is not bad at all from a defensive standpoint, and 4 clean sheets from 7 games isn't bad either, so I don't mind them at all. Bruno hit the bar. Not a terrible performance, but the data doesn't look good. No chances created, no successful dribbles, no shots on target. Obviously, we do have to remember that hitting the bar isn't technically on target, but it was still a pretty decent effort from him from the free kick. But again, at that price point, I probably wouldn't be that keen on him now, unless you're a very, very heavily data-led manager. And even then, the data's not been great in the last few game weeks either. It wasn't a classic by any means. I definitely wouldn't be prioritising buying any players from either sides right now. But if you've got Watkins or Rodgers, I'd say they're probably holds for the time being. So finally, after 21 matches, that's 7 game weeks, we've finally seen a promoted side pick up a win in the Premier League this season. That goes to Leicester, who have beaten Bournemouth 1-0. Now, after 21 games, I would suggest that probably indicates that there's a big divide between promoted sides and the stalwarts in the Premier League at the moment. So maybe we need to look at targeting those promoted sides even more than ever before. But Leicester did play fairly well in this game. I would say that Buonanotte in particular looks a real talent right now. 2 goals, 2 assists from limited minutes as well, because he hasn't started every single game. But when he has been starting, he's been their key focal point in the midfield, making things happen both creatively and with the end product too. At just 5 million, I think he could be another really good budget option if you're looking for an 8th attacker, especially with the fixtures to come. 0.32 XGI per 90 is currently competing, if not slightly better, than Morgan Rodgers as well. So although he's in a worse team, I think he's more fundamental to the way that Leicester are playing, and the fixtures do look better as well. So possibly a pickup who doesn't need to worry about midweek football in the Champions League as well. So I quite like him as a differential option there. Now, Leicester do have great fixtures ahead as well, all the way up to game week 18. That might even bring Jamie Vardy into consideration at 5.7 million now as well. He's gotten 2 goals so far this season, was hooked off on 73 minutes in this match in particular, but I would say not bad value for 5.7 million. Overall, the XG numbers are holding up okay. He is leading the line for them, and he is the preferred centre forward right now as well. I do wonder long term whether he continues to start and continues to get 75 plus minutes, but for now, I think he's a fairly safe bet if you wanted to buy a budget forward. Bournemouth, I would say in this match, were pretty unlucky. 1.44 XG created, although not much of that really went to Semenyo. So Semenyo owners, the fixtures are now kind of in the past. This was the last of the really good ones, and now they've got a little run of poor fixtures over the next 3. So there is going to be maybe hesitation as to whether you want to start him for the next few fixtures. What I would say is that he's so focal to, or so key to everything Bournemouth do, even in the tougher fixtures, I wouldn't necessarily just automatically bench him. I think if anyone's going to make anything happen for Bournemouth, it is him. and Bournemouth can compete against the best sides. We've seen it already. They've held their own against Liverpool for quite a while. Semenyo actually had a goal ruled out for offside in that game. And I think he's just so central to everything they do. I wouldn't be scared of owning him or playing him in those fixtures. 5.7 million, I think it is now. I'd still probably hold on to him personally. So I'm not too fussed on him. But again, if you wanted to sell him or bench him for the next few, that also makes a fair bit of sense. So on to the final game of the weekend, a 3-2 win for Brighton, although at half-time it looked like a completely different story. Obviously, Spurs really capitalising on that Brighton high line and looked likely to take the 3 points going into the break. Obviously, did very well from the off. Even Johnson, after 20 seconds, almost scored if it wasn't for a little bit of a better ball across from Timo Werner, who looked wasteful again, but continues to break the lines and continues to create chances for his teammates. So whilst frustrating, he is helping the other players in the 11 right now. Now, Johnson is obviously benefiting. That's 6 goals in a row now in all competitions. Looks like a great budget-ish option in the midfield, and Spurs have a great run of fixtures to come over the long term. So Johnson, I really like as a pick. Right wing looks like an absolute lock for him right now, considering how he's playing. So I like him as a pickup, and I might even be looking at doubling up on the Spurs attack ahead of game week 8. That double up would include Dominic Solanke, who got an assist today. That's 3 returns in a row now. Goal, assist. The data's still looking good, although 0 XG from this match. A bit more XA, of course, from the chance created for Johnson, that Johnson duly buried. But overall, I do still like Solanke. What was frustrating today is that he seemed to be almost playing a decoy and sitting in a little bit, whilst runners from wide areas seemed to be going beyond him and he could play the ball in behind. A bit like Kane used to for Spurs as well. I wouldn't let that deter you though. I still think Solanke will be a fantastic pick. At times when Kane was at Spurs, we saw it as well, and people would get frustrated, and yet Kane would still pop up with plenty of attacking returns. Solanke looks like that kind of player, and until now, the data look very, very good from an XG point of view. I expect that to continue. Another player whose data looks incredibly good for Spurs is James Maddison. That's 0.9 XGI per 90, so almost an expected attacking return every single match so far this season. He's gotten 5 so far. That's 2 goals, 3 assists. Perhaps a bit unlucky not to get more. And with James Maddison, as we can see on the spreadsheet here, he's very, very good on the bonus. He creates so many chances and he's so heavily involved in everything that Spurs do. If he gets any attacking return, even in a loss like we see today, it's quite likely that he picks up bonus points as well. And the bonus points changes that came in between last season and this always looked very likely to benefit players like James Maddison, those creative forces in the midfield. So I really like him as another differential pickup, although I'd probably put Johnson ahead because he's just more of a goal threat right now. And again, bonus points seem to be going more towards the goal scorers, although not necessarily in this one here. Quick word on Brighton. Obviously, turned the game around really well. Obviously, second half was absolutely phenomenal. Plenty of attacking players getting returns in this one too. The one that probably stands out right now is Danny Welbeck. The reason for that is that he continues to lead the line. The data is also still decent, over 0.4 XG per 90. And a couple of big key chances in this one as well. A bit unlucky not to bury a chance in the first half. And looks likely to continue to lead the line whilst João Pedro is out. And it still looks like João Pedro is going to be out for a little while yet. Now, the international break might have come in at a good time, but from Hertzler's quotes, it seems likely that we might be missing him for another couple of game weeks at least. So Welbeck, if you've got him, I think is a absolutely fine hold. I probably wouldn't be buying him at this point in time because whilst the next 2 fixtures aren't bad, they go into a little run of tougher fixtures after that. So maybe not a priority buy. Same goes for most of Brighton's lineup, especially in defence. Definitely don't look there. But moving into midfield and attack, I wouldn't say that they're the worst options moving forwards, and they will create chances, they will get returns. But with the fixtures to come, I feel like there's probably better out there. As we reach the end of today's video, please do feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed today's content. And especially because it's a new format, just leave a comment below if you did enjoy it and if you want me to continue it. Because if you do, of course, I will do it week after week for you. In the meantime, though, I hope you had a great game week 7. I hope you enjoy the international break, and I'll see you on the other side as we start preparing for game week 8.